Hello and welcome. Now in this video we're going to be talking about the basis for the course, and we're going to be talking about the basics of using screencasting software to create digital products. Now we're going to be focusing on Camtasia or ScreenFlow if you use the Mac. And basically when we get into the meat of the course, we are going to be showing you how to successfully use screencasting in a number of ways that will help you to be successful in creating digital products. Now, by the time the end of the course comes, you are going to know the right equipment, the right software you're going to need in addition to screencasting, and those subtle adjustments that you'll need to make in order to be successful in creating your video course or your tutorials. Now, when screencasting, what you're doing is you are literally showing your viewer exactly what they need to do step by step. And this is a foundational building block for making money online or internet marketing. You really do have to know how to do this successfully if you're going to work long term in order to create a business or in order to be a freelancer or even to create your own products. Now, screencasting is important to create tutorial videos either to sell or to educate. And when you can show someone what is happening on your screen and you are able to lead them and guide them through what you're doing, you are going to be successful in connecting and communicating, and you're going to find that people will want to come back and watch more and more of your content. Now, screencasting is also very important for many businesses to be able to successfully create customer service videos that will show a user exactly what they can do in order to be successful in navigating a website or to getting the value from a purchase that they've already made. It's an excellent way of being able to leverage your time, to leverage your resources so that you don't have to have a customer service person in order to show someone every little thing that they have to do in order to get the value from their purchase. You can literally create a video that will give them the information they need on demand 24 hours a day. So screencasting can be valuable for you even if you're not an online business, but if you're an offline or a traditional brick and mortar business, you can use this successfully in your business to really get good return on all of your investment. So enjoy this course, use it so that you can successfully create screencasting videos and create more value in your business. So with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be discussing briefly what you need in order to be successful creating screencast videos. And quite honestly, when you're getting started, you need to kind of know this at the outset. There is only one standard for screencasting videos, specifically for those who are going to be creating digital products or who are going to be internet marketers. And that standard is Camtasia for PC and ScreenFlow for the Mac. Camtasia is made by the company TechSmith, and you'll see that at techsmith.com. ScreenFlow is made by the company Telestream, and you'll see that at telestream.net. In particular, internet marketers, when you're first getting started, it seems like a lot of money to pay for one piece of software. But because of the central nature of this software in what you're going to be doing as a marketer, creating videos, creating tutorials, creating customer service videos, creating guidance videos for outsourcers, it is something that you want to make sure that you've got the right thing. Now, here's the thing. Camtasia and ScreenFlow, they've got 30-day trials, and you can use it in order to create the income in order to pay for it. So, as an internet marketer, one of the things that you can do is you can get the 30-day trial, generate the income, and then use some of that income in order to pay for Camtasia. It is a long-term investment that you will be using probably for as long as you're doing internet marketing. Now, if you're a university student, you can typically get Camtasia for about $100. You will want to make sure that your license will allow you as a student to do internet marketing. If it's part of your learning process, typically you can. Other cases, you may or may want to check with TechSmith to understand the licensing and what you can do commercially in an internet marketing capacity or as an internet marketer. Now, you can get Camtasia used. Now, we've got some of those options in your resources PDF on your resources slide. Make sure you check those resources, check them out, because you can obtain these programs, and you can obtain them either at a discount or sometimes even used. Now, it's important to note that you are going to want to be careful if you choose to go this route, mainly because these are license-based softwares, and the companies that issue them, they do have a licensing server that if more than two copies are running at the same time, they will be able to tell, and they will be able to lock you out. So make sure that you are very careful. You know the person, you know they're reputable, or you have some way of verifying that even if they're selling it to you used, that you are actually buying something that you are going to have title to, you're going to be able to hold, you're going to be able to use as a business owner. Now, this is what you'll need to understand as you go into this purchase. You want to make the investment into this software. There are lots of substitutes. There are cheaper alternatives in the long run. The things that you're going to be able to do to save time and to be able to create resources for yourself, there really is no second alternative to these programs. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video we're going to be talking about the optimal computer setup where you will be using multiple screens. And that's going to be fairly important. One of the first things that I suggest that you do is to make use of multiple screens, and I'll show you what that looks like in your setup here in a minute. Now this is going to be very easy for you to be able to do and to navigate on your personal computer in the Windows and Mac operating system. Now typically an additional monitor can be picked up for as little as $50 used or $100 new, and of course there are resources in our resources slide and PDF, although you'll be able to find a number of resources in your local area to find an additional monitor. Now you are going to want to purchase as high of a resolution as you can for your monitor, and at the time of recording this resolution is 1920 by 1080. Now you may need to go higher than that depending on when you're watching this video course, but what's on the market, as much as you can possibly afford, you want to get that resolution because that is going to affect how you screencast. Now, the multiple screen environment is going to allow you to toggle back and forth between notes and screens and do other things while you actually create the video. So in other words, you'll be able to have your notes on one screen and you'll be able to have your presentation on the other screen while you're actually delivering your presentation. And it's helpful to be able to toggle back and forth and to have all of your resources right there at your fingertips. Now, as you'll see later on in the course, it's going to make it very easy to create PowerPoint videos and for you to be able to talk through your slides and to have all of your resources there. And then we're actually going to show you that here in the course. But now let's take a look at what we mean by the multiple screen environment. Now, as you'll notice, there is a laptop on the right-hand side and a monitor on the left-hand side, and you'll see that the monitor is fairly old. It doesn't necessarily have to cost a lot of money. As I said, you just want to get as much resolution as you can for the money that you have. But even if you don't have a lot to work with and you've only got $50 or maybe $100 to work with, get what you can until you can afford more. Now, the the monitor doesn't have to go on the right side. It can go on the left side if you're more comfortable with that. In some cases, if you're working in an environment where you want to have your monitor above your laptop, you can do that inside of both Windows and the Mac environment. So the most important thing is that you have these two screens to work with so that you'll be able to not only have your notes, but you'll also be able to have the screen or to be able to share your moving back and forth between web browsers or what's actually on your computer. So this is what your setup is going to look like when it's optimal, and I will see you in the next video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video we want to discuss where your computer needs to be situated in order for you to screencast properly. Now in particular, one of the things that you're going to be thinking about is, in some cases, both Camtasia and ScreenFlow, you are going to be using these programs and you're actually going to be recording a video of yourself. And when you record that video of yourself, you're going to actually insert that video inside of your presentation. Now, when you do that, you're going to want to make sure that you are looking at the camera directly. And that means then that you're going to want to make sure that your computer is raised to eye level. Either situating your computer below eye level is going to give your viewer a view of your ceiling, or in some cases what's going on behind you. If your computer is too high, then it's going to give your viewer a view of your floor and anything else that's going on around you. So you want to situate your computer when you're using it, in particular when you're screencasting, at eye level. Now, this is not just going to be important for when you're using your camera. It's actually important for you when you're reading and navigating. One of the subtle adjustments that you need to make is making sure that you're looking directly at your screen, because everything you do, everything that you communicate, you're going to be doing that, giving your viewer the opportunity. You're going to be explaining things to your viewer as they're happening. And so you want to make sure, again, you're looking directly at the computer as things are happening. Now, one of the things that you're going to want to do when you do this is you can get things from the office supply store. And I'm going to show you a picture of probably the best possible thing that you can get that doesn't cost a lot of money in order to accomplish this. Of course, you can use books or anything else that you have to stack your computer on top of until you get that computer to the right height. But you need to understand something, that when you're screencasting, this is going to be a short-term solution. You want to get something that will allow your computer to breathe so that it won't overheat. So you want to raise your computer as much as you can. And I'm going to show you what you're going to actually be able to go to the office supply store and get. You can typically get it fairly inexpensively. Now, you'll see that it's basically a mail tray, or one that is wire mesh, and it actually has holes in it, so that when your computer literally sits on top of it, your computer can actually breathe, so you won't overheat it. Now, you're also going to notice that when you use one of these mail trays, you can literally stack them until your computer is at the right height. And that's why this particular solution is probably going to be the best one. You want to keep stacking these until your computer is raised to the level at which you are looking directly at the screen, or if you're going to be using a webcam, that your webcam is at eye level. That's going to be important when you are actually creating your video, for the credibility of what you're going to be communicating to the actual people that are going to be watching. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in the next video. Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to be talking about the microphone you're going to be using with your personal computer or your laptop in order to screencast. Now, admittedly, there are many opinions about finding the best microphone for your screencast recordings. Now, sound quality is important, but there are other considerations. Now, if you can have a place where there is absolute silence, that means that no one is going to walk in. There are not going to be any noises from outside of your home or your office. There are not going to be any heaters going on or water running in the background or pets or anything like that. A cardioid microphone, such as the Audio Technica 2020 or the Blue Yeti, is a very good choice. And these produce fantastic sound. And most tutorials and most marketers will say that these are going to be the best choices for screencasting. However, one of the things that is just reality about doing videos and about getting courses done is it's going to be rare when you're going to have absolute silence. And those mics, the Blue Yeti as well as the AT2020, they are going to pick up background noise, and you're going to find yourself starting and stopping, and in some cases you're not going to finish a project that you really need to get done. So in those cases, I would suggest an alternative of a Plantronics headset. And the reason that this is important is because the Plantronics headset, as I'll get to in a minute, really does do noise cancellation. Now, you're going to want to look for one that costs about $30 instead of the cheapest one that you find. Typically, there are lots of Plantronics headsets out there. There are ones for gaming. There are ones for telephone operators. But you want to get the one that's slightly upgraded because, again, you want to have one that's noise canceling, and that is very important. Now, the Plantronics headset does not plug into your USB jack. It plugs into your computer's stereo jack. And this is why that's important. You won't be using a USB mic, and it won't take up your processing resources while you record. And this is really, really crucial because at times you will run into cases where Camtasia or ScreenFlow is going to be very memory intensive, and when you have a USB microphone, it literally is using resources from your computer and sometimes will cause a latency, in particular when you are recording a video where you're appearing. So when you're recording yourself and you're going to appear in your video, your screencasting video, you're going to want to make sure that you're using your memory and you're using it in a way that's going to be efficient. And a headset will actually allow you to do that. Now, when you have a USB microphone and your computer is running heavily on memory, you are going to see latency mismatches in your video. And this is where, when you start doing your editing, you'll have to start making decisions as to whether or not you're going to redo your video, or do you want to leave the latency mismatch in. A stereo mic just avoids this whole problem. And so, yes, you're going to get a slightly degraded level of sound quality that you would. But look, the sound quality that you're going to get from a Plantronics headset is going to be good enough for a solid tutorial. Really, when you're focused on really delivering good value, and you've got a decent mic, a good Plantronics headset that you pay a little money for, you are going to be able to put together a great tutorial. And again, as I said, now you are going to want to make sure that you get the headset that does noise cancellation. And this is why it's important. Again, you're not going to have absolute silence in the background. You're not going to have to tell everyone to leave the home, or you're not going to have everybody around you stop what they're doing, because a headset, typically, if you pay enough for one and you get a decent one, and again, I recommend the Plantronics headset that costs about $30. It's going to allow you to record in areas where you don't have to have absolute silence. Now, again, you don't want to have people in the background putting up lots of noise. But in general, if people are just going through their normal motions, their normal activities, you should be able to use your headset and record videos, and most importantly, you're going to get your courses and your screencasting projects done. So make sure that you have a noise cancellation guard on your mic. And if you don't have one when you purchase your microphone, you can actually purchase the noise cancellation guard. Now we have that in the resources area. If you don't or you can't find one in your local area, when you actually go and buy your microphone. And what this noise cancellation filter does is it actually reduces the pops in your actual recording. Right, so it's a great thing to have. Now, what you're also going to want to do is when you're recording, you want to position your mic away from your mouth directly. So you don't want to have it right in front of your mouth. And this is also going to help you from popping into the actual microphone. Now you're looking here at a Plantronics headset, and again, this particular one was actually $19.95 on sale here in the United States, here in Harrisburg at Best Buy, and you can actually get them typically, as I said, someplace around $30 if you have to get them online. Once again, these headphones are not USB. So they're going to plug into your jack, right? So again, this is important because you don't want to use the computer's resources or software resources while you're screencasting. You don't want to have that latency mismatch. And again, when you can, you want to go ahead and get a noise filter, because again, that's going to reduce the pops in your actual presentation. So this is going to be something that, again, for some of you may be eye-opening, and you might think, boy, I didn't think that all this was necessary in order to do a screencast tutorial, but this will actually increase the level of your productivity at the same time as you're being able to put together a decent tutorial. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to be discussing having a production machine. And one of the things that you will find that in terms of producing videos is that you will come to create a course, you'll come to create videos, and then you'll have to then render those videos. You'll have to turn them into MP4 files that you can deliver to your customer. Now, the problem with that is that it takes the computer's resources, and you typically can't really do a whole lot else on your computer while those videos are being turned into MP4 files, while it's going through the rendering process. And so one of the ways that you will be able to save time is not having to render your videos on the same computer that you do your work on. And this is very important from a productivity standpoint. You will find that it'll be difficult to get courses done if you have to stop the process in order to take sometimes what could be hours in order to render the videos in high definition that you need to be able to package and sell. Now, Camtasia Studio and as does ScreenFlow will allow you to use 2 installations for 1 license. So in other words, you buy Camtasia for 1 price, and then you can actually install legally Camtasia Studio on 2 computers. And that's important because that means then you will be able to place your second installation on another computer. And it's what Camtasia calls a production machine. And you really should use your second license for that purpose. The reason is that you will use this production machine to do the final processing. So you'll create your videos, you'll do the editing, you'll put them all together. One of the things we're going to be talking about is how you're going to do this all in one sitting, but you will then move those videos onto another machine in order to get them done. Now, the best way to do this is actually to use an external drive and plug it into your production PC. So in other words, you're going to save all of your files to an external drive, and when you get ready to render the videos, you're just going to move them over to your second PC in order to render. Now, one of the things is that inside of Camtasia that you want to be aware of, and this is a minor thing, but you do want to be aware of this, is that when you use special assets or you use something that is particular to your computer, you're going to have to make sure that those same things are going to be on your production machine in addition to the computer that you create your videos on. And that's something that you want to be aware of as you are creating videos that you're going to actually produce on a second computer. Now, this also means that you can actually hand over the videos as you create them to someone else to actually render them, or even more importantly, and we're going to be kind of walking you through this process, you can actually work on your videos and render them all at once on your production machine and walk away. Now, later in the course, I'm going to show you how to batch render multiple videos. And that's where, when you look at this, look at doing things on this production machine, as well as combining it with what I show you in the batch rendering process, this means that you can create an entire course and you can work on the creation, and then you can set all your videos to render on the production machine. That means then that once you've completed the course and you set it to render and you set all of your videos going at once in order to be turned into MP4 files, not only will you not have your computer tied up, but then you'll be free to walk away and do as you please for the rest of the process. And again, you can only do this if you're using a production machine and you're using some of the other strategies in terms of productivity that we're going to be talking about in this course. So again, the production machine, if you can do it, obviously it is a cost. You are going to have a second laptop. But here is the key point to the production machine as we close. You will complete courses and products faster. You'll get them to market faster, and you will actually complete projects where you will not be discouraged and walk away from them because of how long it's going to take or because of something happening. So it's a very important yet subtle distinction that if you can make an investment typically in a second laptop for about $100 or $200. It doesn't necessarily take a brand new laptop. It can be an old used laptop that, depending on where you live in the world or how much it costs, you can get one on Craigslist fairly cheaply, and you can then set that as your production machine, set up your Camtasia on that second license, and then you can then go to use it and then have your Camtasia operating between those computers. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about setting up your home network for using your production machine. And this is very important because you may or may not want to necessarily buy an external drive. In addition to that, you may want to render videos on a different computer that you already have in a different part of your home or your office. And you can still do so using both production machine and your creation machine using Camtasia and ScreenFlow. Now, what you're going to need to make sure that is happening is that your home network can literally see all of your computers and your drives. And we're going to show you what that looks like here in a minute. Then what you're going to need to do, as we said earlier, is you're going to need to make sure that you have all the same assets on your production machine as you do on your creation machine. And that's really the only thing that you're going to have to do in order to use your home network instead of an external drive for your rendering process. Because what you're going to be doing literally is you are going to be using the production machine to grab the files through your home network from your creation machine. Now, you are going to have your production machine accessing the files on your creation computer in order to render the videos in a timely fashion. So again, now this is not going to be quite as efficient as if you were using external drive. However, you still will be able to work on your computer. You still will be able to do things that you would ordinarily not be able to do if you were rendering on your creation machine, the machine that you actually use to create your videos. You will be able to continue to be productive and work as you see fit. Now, this is going to be especially helpful when you have multiple videos to do, or when you have an entire course that you're trying to render. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look and see what that home network would actually look like. Now, what you're looking at is a home network, and the place that you're going to actually use or actually import your files from will be from any of your creation machines. So you'll notice that there are 5 computers on the home network, and I can literally use my production machine and Camtasia to grab files from any of these PCs on the home network, because these computers are actually set up to talk to each other. Now, you are going to have to go through a process in order to make sure that your computers are talking to each other on your home network, but once they are, you'll be able to use your screencasting software to grab files from any of these other computers and drag them into your screencasting software in order for you to render videos and for you to be able to have it done while you're working on your creation machine. And once again, what this does is it allows you to be productive and allows you to continue to move forward as your project is completing. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now, in this video, we're going to be discussing using Camtasia projects, media, and recordings. Now, when you're using screencasting software, you are going to want to make use of the project feature, and we're going to show you what that means here in a minute. Now, that means then that you're going to be able to save the editing that you do in a file as you make them. And this is pretty important because, again, this is going to help you to be more productive. What this means is that you can work with multiple media sources and implement post-processing or editing. And it's also going to save you time, and this is the big deal. It's going to save you time from having to redo and restart videos once you've made a mistake or you think of something that you want to insert. And it's really one of the basics of using Camtasia, understanding the projects. Now, let's take a look and see what exactly this means. Now, you can see here we're using an older version of Camtasia, but the concept is still the same. What you're going to see here is that there are some files that you're going to see that are considered to be Camtasia Studio projects, and that there are going to be some files that are going to be Camtasia recording documents. Now, these recording documents are literally the documents that you're using in order to create your recording. The studio projects are the ones that you're using to create your edits, and they allow you to work on your edits progressively, or in other words, they allow you to work on all of your edits without you having to redo your entire video and start again. Now, what you see here inside of a project file is you see the recording document. Okay, so you're looking at this document, and this is actually the file that we're recording and we're using in order to create the actual voice in the actual video. And then this entire setup, when we add in title clips, we add in music, all of that takes place inside of a project file. So when we are actually working with our recording file, what we're going to do at the end is we're going to go to the file, and then we're going to save this entire document as a project file. And we're going to save it as something that we're going to remember and we're going to see in our file area. So we're going to take all of this information, all of our edits, everything that we do, we are then going to save it as a project file. Now, that means then that you can actually You can have periods where you maybe you maybe make a mistake in your recording, because you're going to be able to come back to your recording and edit them out and save them to a project file. Now again, let's take a look and see what that means here in your file directory. When we save it, we're going to have a project file, and obviously the project file is not going to be very big, and then you're actually going to have the actual recording, which is going to be bigger. So you'll see here that this recording, you're going to have all kinds of things. It's going to be long, you're going to make mistakes, but you're going to clean it up in the project file and save everything there, so that all you have to do when you're ready to start working on your file again or adding something to it is to go back and open up your project file. And when you open up your project file, what you're going to see is everything that you've done in order to work on your recording. And that is what you're going to see here. You're going to see everything that you've done to work on your actual recording. Okay, so you have everything that you need here inside of your project file. So what you want to do, again, just make sure that after you've recorded, after you start working on the edits, that you save everything to a project file, so that you'll then be able to go back and edit and continue to work on something even when you make a mistake. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in the next video. Now in this video, Welcome back. Now in this video we're going to be discussing doing your videos in one take or one long scene. Now once you understand the concept of projects that we talked about in the last video, you're going to want to make sure that you're doing your videos in one sitting or in one recording, or in Hollywood language, one actual take. And it's much more effective to do this and go back and edit out your mistakes. Now to do this, you're going to be able to see on the timeline where you need to edit by putting a marker there. Now most marketers, and myself included, make that marker or mark the edit space by stopping, allowing silence to pass, and then clapping loudly 3 times near the mic. And you're going to do it just like this. And we'll see what that looks like there on the timeline. Now, this is what you will be able to do. It's going to allow you to see where you need to go back to the timeline and cut out the place where you've actually messed up in the recording. And you're going to want to keep your changes saved as you go in and out of your project file. Now, make sure that you've programmed the pause button the way you want it so that it will be easily accessible, and you'll be able to know almost unconsciously how to pause the recording. Now, let's take a look at how you're going to do that. Now, what I've done for the purposes of this recording is I've actually opened up a second instance of a later version of Camtasia that I'm showing you. So what you're going to do in terms of understanding your pause button is when you pull open your recording bar, you want to go into your tools section and your options section, and you want to go to the hotkeys. And one of the things that you want to make sure is that your hotkey to pause your recording is going to be one button that you can tell almost instantly. Now, in this particular case, the pause button, all that has to be done to pause the recording would be for the user to hit the F9 button. And this is important because you want to be able to get to that pause almost unconsciously, at a glance, and to be able to stop the recording so that you can make whatever adjustments you need to make, so that you can either maybe do an edit, or maybe cough or sneeze, or whatever it is you need to do. You can do that effectively and do all of your recordings in one sitting by making sure that your pause button is where you can get to it. Now again, this is not the same as a stop or the marker button or the screen draw. Again, this is important because you want to be able to pause the recording and then move on once you're actually ready to resume your presentation. This allows you to do to save time in your recording so that you don't have to do multiple recordings of the same thing, starting and stopping and starting over and starting and stopping. You're going to do one recording, you're going to go back and edit it, and this record button or this pause button is the key to being able to do that successfully. Now what you're looking at in the Camtasia screen right now is you're looking at the editing screen. And one of the things you're going to see is that at the beginning of this recording, I just let the recording go so that I'd be able to get situated. I'd be able to get my slides right. The other thing you're going to see here is you're going to see these 3 long lines here, and those are those 3 claps that I told you about. This means that I've marked the space where I need to go back and edit, and actually I can then go back and I can edit all of those mistakes out by just cutting them out. But if I didn't mark it, it would be difficult to impossible to finding it quickly. Now, the reason that you're going to do this is important because you're going to stop in the middle when you have done something and maybe it's not quite what you want. You're going to leave some silence and you're going to clap 3 times loudly. And again, you're going to be able to see right away where this is on the timeline, where you're able to go back, edit out your mistakes, and then be able to go back to recording. You're going to do all of this and save it. Again, remember we talked about this as a project file. And when you save it as a project file, you're actually going to have all of your edits while you're going to keep this raw recording or this recording file intact. And that's really why it's important. You're going to be able to do everything in one sitting or one take when you do your videos. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video we're going to be considering some things that you want to do before you start recording. And when you think about these things, these are things that will really facilitate you being able to deliver good content. And they're subtle things, but they're things that when you do them, you'll be more prepared and you will have a better and smoother delivery in terms of your actual content. Now, the first thing is kind of self-explanatory. You want to get your content ready beforehand and make sure you know it pretty well. What you don't want to do is to start thinking about what you're going to say and thinking about the actual content or thinking through what it actually means. You really want to have an idea of what everything means before you actually deliver it. And typically this is going to be the case when you're actually writing your own presentation slides, you're writing your own script, or you're delivering content that you're familiar with. But at the very least, make sure you know your content well before you start recording. Now, screencast videos always work best when you already have some knowledge and expertise, because you are going to need to deliver some ad-lib comments. You're going to fill in where you have more insight, and sometimes an insight's not going to come to you until you actually start the recording. But when you have the expertise, you can deliver that additional content or that ad-lib or those words that you need to fill in the blanks when you actually have expertise in the area where you are actually doing your screencast video or presentation. Now, when you do a screencast and you're going to be showing people something on your web browser, this is kind of important. Before you start the presentation, open up all the tabs on your browser ahead of time. In other words, think through your presentation. You want to do this in sequence. Already have your browser ready. Now, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. If you're going to be doing a presentation, you want to make sure that you've already got the tabs in order that you're going to be talking about them. Again, you don't want to have to think through this process. You want to be able to kind of switch and toggle back and forth and do things pretty much at the top, at the click of a mouse, instead of doing this while you do your actual presentation. First of all, you don't want to have someone watch you while you pull up a web browser. But the other thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to think through the process while you're actually recording. Now, one more thing that you want to think about here is you don't want to linger on any one screen too long. And it's important to note that Hollywood changes screens or changes scenes every 8 seconds. They do that for a reason. That's because people's attention span is short, and you don't want to linger on any one thing or any one particular line in your slide any length of time. Try to keep something moving in your presentation at all times. Now, if you keep some action going, viewers will not be quick to lose interest. And this is going to be something that you want to do in all of your videos, whether or not you're looking at something on your web browser, your desktop, or even your presentation. Now, the other thing that you want to do is when you create videos, keep one video focused on one subject. Don't focus on 2 or 3 subjects. This will confuse the viewer, and it will make it difficult for them to go back and view your video again and to refer to it. Focus on one thing at a time in a video. Now, when you're creating your videos in particular, you want to make sure or assume that when it comes to the subject you're communicating, assume they don't know anything. Screencasting is a fantastic way of literally leading someone from knowing nothing to knowing what you know. But you do have to go in sequence, and you do have to assume they know nothing And you can literally use screencasting to walk them through every step. So take that opportunity to do that. Don't skip steps assuming that they already know something. Now, if you're going to add in things like title clips and music, make sure that you get them ready before you start your project. And there is a way in order for you to do that. Now, I'm inside of my Camtasia screen, and I'm just going to go right here to the top, and I'm going to click Import Media. And then you'll see here that I've got some Camtasia files that I've already worked with. I can pull all of those Camtasia files or one of them into my editing screen, but I want to do that ahead of time. If I'm going to be using things like music, I want to import that music into my project screen as we go. You're going to see all I use is the import feature. So anything I'm going to be using in my presentation, I want to have it inside of here ahead of time before I actually start the presentation and the editing process, because again, you want to be able to be efficient and you don't want to have to think through a process while you're doing your recording. Now, one more thing to think about here is if you're recording multiple videos, it is important to make sure that your content is going to be uniform. So in other words, if you're going to be communicating or you're going to be doing something across several videos, make sure that the ideas are the same. Make sure your voice is the same. Make sure that you are, you're delivering in the same tone. Do what you can to make sure that your content is uniform. If you're going to use a certain font, make sure you're using a certain font in your presentation throughout all of your presentation slides. If you're going to be using a certain kind of graphic, make sure you're using those graphics, again, consistently across all of your content in your presentation. Now, try to avoid using different styles inside of one video or across a course. So when you start a presentation, you start a course, make sure that you're going to use a certain you're going to use a certain PowerPoint theme. Well, do what you can to keep using that throughout the course. Don't change midstream and give your viewer, because what it does is it really confuses them and it disorients them from your actual content, gets them focused on things other than what you're trying to say and what you're trying to explain to them and what you're trying to teach to them. Keep your content uniform as you go through your presentation. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in the next video. Welcome back. Now in this video we're going to be discussing recording your PowerPoint, and typically when you are going to be using Camtasia or ScreenFlow, what you're going to be using for your presentation is typically going to be something like Microsoft PowerPoint or one of the presentation softwares. We're going to focus on Microsoft PowerPoint in particular because that's what most people are going to have. And when you do that, one of the things you want to think about is these few things that you're going to be able to do to make your job easier. And typically all presentation software have these features. So when you are using something other than PowerPoint, you want to find these features on your actual presentation software. Now, what you want to do basically is understand the presentation mode and its features and where your screen is going to be. Now, let's see what we mean when we say that. Now, what you're going to notice here in PowerPoint is that you have a couple of things here. You have the ability inside of PowerPoint to reveal the taskbar or to hide it. You also have the ability to display a certain screen. Now, what PowerPoint allows you to do is it allows you to either duplicate your slideshow. In other words, you can show the same thing that you're seeing on both sides of your screen. Remember now, you should be using two screens in order to be effective in your delivery, and you can actually duplicate those screens. In other words, you can have your presentation on the left side and you can have the very same thing on the right side. Or in the case where you have something different on one screen and another, you can actually swap those things using this feature, using the Swap Presenter View and Slideshow. So you want to use this to your advantage because you can then place your information where you want it and where you're actually going to deliver it when you're doing your recording. Now again, using these features will allow you to advance your slide without showing your cursor. And that's always going to be more professional than people seeing your cursor. And when you have and you're able to toggle back and forth between your display settings and PowerPoint, you can literally use your second screen in order to advance, in order to keep your recording from showing up. I'm going to actually slide the camera in so you can see it. When you're able to operate between two slides, you're able to keep your display settings where you were. You don't have to look at this camera. So we can actually slide this back off into another screen. And so that's what really using the presentation mode as well as dual screens allows you to do. Allows you the flexibility of knowing where you are in your presentation and to be able to advance your slides. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you're going to choose the widescreen aspect ratio. In many cases, you're going to be uploading your videos to a video sharing site like YouTube, and in that case, you want to use the widescreen aspect ratio inside of PowerPoint. Now, let's take a look at where that is so that you can see it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the Design tab inside of PowerPoint, and then what you're going to see is you're going to see the slide size. And in this particular case, I'm using the widescreen aspect ratio, and that's the aspect ratio you're going to want to use when you're recording your video. The other thing that when you're doing this and you're actually using a laptop where you're going to be using a wide screen, you want to use this because it's going to make it easier to render your video in a format where you are going to be able to have your video ready to be uploaded to video sharing sites as well as YouTube. So routinely, you're going to use the widescreen aspect ratio unless you know of an instance or unless you know your format is going to be the standard format. Typically, you're going to use the widescreen and you're going to record on the side where your laptop is, where you've got where your width is longer than your height. Okay, and that's pretty much what the widescreen is going to be. Now, you want to keep animations to a minimum, and you only want it to help the reader. So in other words, don't use lots of different animations. You want to keep your animations. You don't want to have things flying in from different areas or having everything animated. When you're doing a presentation and you're doing one for business, pretty much the maximum is going to be you want to have maybe your text coming down, and the reason you're doing that, you're not just doing that so that you'll have it to give your reader something exciting to look at. You're really doing that so that your reader or your viewer can focus on one thing at a time. And so that is really why you're using animation, so that you don't have to have a slide presentation that is focused where all the information is right there for the viewer to see. You want to bring in your points one at a time so that they can focus on that one thing at a time. And again, we talked about this before. Don't stay on any one bullet point any length of time. You want to try to write a new line where you can. So keep your bullet points short. Don't make them really long so that you have to stay on one bullet point for a long time in order to explain it. Try to make sure your PowerPoint or your presentation is such that you have lots of little points instead of a few very long points. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in the next video. Welcome back. Now, if you're following the other suggestions that we've given you in the other videos, you're recording all of your videos in one take. So you're going to complete your video, and then you're going to be at the point where you're going to be ready than to go back and edit out your mistakes. Now, there is a temptation, and there are some people who would rather edit all of their videos at once or edit them at a later time. That is not recommended. The recommended path would be for you to edit each video as soon after you create it as possible. Now, that does not mean that you have to render the video. Remember, we're going to go through a process. We're going to render the videos all at one time after we finish all the edits. But the way the workflow goes is that as soon as you create one video and you have that you are ready then to start working with it, you edit the video then. Now, you want to do this because you want to have it fresh in your mind where you need to fix your video. You're going to remember where you need to go back and fix times where you had to clap 3 times. If you wait and you wait till the end and you've got multiple videos, it's almost a guarantee and almost a certainty you're going to forget some of those times and your videos are going to come out less than professional, or you're going to have some mistakes you're going to have to go back and correct. When you record the video, go ahead and edit your video right at that time. Now, the other thing is that if you are going to be using a music clip, you should have already selected your royalty-free music. You should already have it ready. It should already be inside of your in your timeline. You should have selected it beforehand. If you're going to be using images of any kind or title clips, you should have already selected them at the point at which you're doing the edit, especially if you're going to use one that is custom. So make sure that you've done those things before the editing process and that you have them ready. Now, the other thing that you want to do is when you find something that you are going to be using across multiple videos or even across multiple projects, you want to then save those assets inside of your Camtasia Studio. Now remember, you're going to want to make sure they're saved on both your creation machine and production machine. But let's talk about what you're going to do when you talk about saving assets. Now you are looking at one aspect that I have here just for the sake of the recording that I'm going to be using across multiple projects and even across multiple videos. And I have this information in what's called my clip bin. Right down here is the timeline where we do the editing, and here are your assets at the top in your clip bin. Now, if you know you're going to be using something over and over again, all you've got to do is go and right-click that item, and then you're going to click Add to Library. And then what Camtasia is going to do is it's going to save it to the library. Of course, you can then you can recategorize it. You can put it in the place where you think it should be. Right? I can put it in the audio section, and then I'll know exactly where it is. So when you've got multiple assets and you're going to be using them across multiple projects, do what you can to go ahead and save them so that every time you open up Camtasia, whether or not it's on your production machine or creation machine, you're going to have those assets. Now again, if you save them over here in your creation machine, make sure you save them in your production machine. And of course, when you're doing that, all of your projects are going to be consistent because you're going to have the same assets and they're going to be used in the very same way. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video we're going to be discussing using the timeline view in order to edit your video, and these are going to be some editing basics that everyone has to know in order to create a product. Now you don't have to be an expert, but if you can understand these things and you can operate them basically, you'll be able to create a video in whatever format or in whatever style that you actually want, because you'll be able to edit your video once you're done. Now you do need to know a few timeline basics, and right now I'm going to show you the Camtasia timeline. And you'll see here that you've got basic video, basic audio in order to edit those things. And then this area that I'm clicking in right here, this is called the clip bin, and this is where you import all of your files and documents into. Now, if you're looking at this interface, this is a previous version of Camtasia. It is not the latest one. So most of you may or may not have the latest one. So we're going to use a previous one, and the later versions are probably even easier to use than the one that I'm about to show you right now. But if you can understand the basics of this interface, you'll be able to use Camtasia and ScreenFlow in just about any editing format that you want. So let's dig into the timeline a little further. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to learn how to insert any other media, such as images, audio, or even a previous recording that we did on Camtasia into our clip bin. So let's do that right now. And it's actually pretty simple. We're just going to go inside of Camtasia. We're going to go to the file area, and then we're just going to click import media. And when we click import media, we can import music if we want to. So in this particular case, I'm going to pull a music file into my timeline. I can also pull images into my timeline. And to do that, of course, I use the same feature. I'll go and I'll import the media, and I'll go to my pictures or wherever I hold my pictures online or on my computer, and then I'll just click there and open it. When I click open, it appears inside of the clip bin. Now I can also do that with previous Camtasia recordings. And to do that, again, all I'll need to do is go to the file area. I'm going to click import media, and then I'm going to find a previous Camtasia recording. Now I'll just find it on my hard drive. Again, this is a Camtasia 7 document. The Camtasia 8 documents look slightly different. You're just going to add in that document and drag it right there into your timeline. Okay, so we've got all our documents here. Now to get started, what we're going to do is drag down our document into the timeline. You're going to see it appear there in terms of sound. We're going to set the recording dimensions. And what you're going to see here is you're going to see your recording. You're going to see the video. You're going to see the audio. And in the case of Camtasia 7, you're going to have room in order to put another audio track. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click on that audio track and delete it. And then what we have there is we have the ability now to cut audio, to cut video out. So just to show you how to cut out a piece of video, we're just going to slide to a point where we have those 3 lines there we talked about. You'll see here 2 sections where we messed up the video. We're going to slide it here and cut out those pieces, because those are where the pieces where we didn't do quite right. We're going to click the scissors here, and now those pieces are out of our video. We're also going to go here to the beginning of the timeline where there's silence. You can see that there. We're going to cut out that piece, and now we have a good video recording. Now what we want to do is we want to then take a look at adding a transition. Right, that's really the next thing that we want to talk about here. And a transition, all it really does is it gives the viewer a way of making a connection between 2 pieces that may or may not fit together. So let's take a look at how you're going to do that. Now, in order to have a transition, all you're going to do inside of here is you're going to bring your cursor to the point where you want to make the transition. Now, in this particular case, it would be a good idea if I made a transition between actually maybe my slides and showing pictures, right? That's a good transition to make. Now, you're going to notice that I'm going to have trouble finding the exact spot at which my slide transitions to a picture. But there is a way for me to be able to deal with that. So let's take a look at how you do that. You're going to have here the ability to stretch out the entire video. What this will do is this will help you to find exactly where you want to make your transition. So we're going to stretch it out, and then we can find on the timeline where we want to make the transition. Okay, so we see that something happens someplace here, And what we're going to do is we're going to stretch it all the way out. And then we're going to click a split button here. And the split is the place where we can actually put our transition. And we're going to be able to see that when we go to the transition section, which we will click here. We're going to click transitions. And on the transition section, we'll actually see the place where we can actually put a transition there. And the transitions will allow us to put in different ways of making those connections. So we can do a cube rotate. We can actually fade between the scenes or fade between the black scenes. The one I like to use is a cube rotate. And I'm just going to insert my my transition right there between those two slides. And I'm just going to click that, insert that transition. And then when it comes to that point, it's actually going to rotate the entire screen. Now, that is pretty much how you're going to do a transition. Very basic. As I said, it's going to be even easier to do inside of later versions of Camtasia, but if you have an older version, then you can do a transition in just that way. Now, when I come back to my timeline, the cube rotate looks to be a little long, but then we're going to squeeze that back to a normal length so that we know what our transition looks like and what our video is actually going to look like. Now, the other thing we want to do basically when we're doing tutorial videos or creating products is we want to be able to use a title clip. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. And to insert that title clip, we're just going to tab back to the beginning of our video. And what we like to do is we like to go into the title clip area. We want to add a title clip. And then we want to do whatever writing we want to have on our title clip right in there. Now you can actually see what your slide is going to look like there. One of the things that you can do in order to make a nice looking title slide is you can make that as big as you want. And then that is how your title slide will actually be filled in. And you will then have a slide there. You can do the very same thing at the end of your video, which is something that I like to do. And actually now, in order to show you how to put the title clip at the end, I'm actually in a different video now. And I'm just going to skip to the end, and I'm going to tab all the way to the end, and I'm going to go back to my title clips here, and I'm just going to add in a blank title clip. And that black screen will just appear at the end of the video. I can actually then go back and insert my transitions into the video, and I'm going to do that pretty much by going to my transitions. And any place where I want to insert the cube rotate, in this particular case, I can insert it after the end of my video or at the beginning. Any place where I want it, I can insert it between all clips. I can use different ones. In this particular case, I'm just going to insert it between the end of my video and that title clip so that it fades into that black screen. And one thing that's pretty important is that we're able to blur out sensitive information as well as use cursor effects. Those are going to be the last two things that I'm going to show you here in this video. Now let's take a look at how we're going to do that on our timeline here. Okay, in terms of the cursor effects, in a very simple way, all you're going to do is go to the cursor effect. And I suggest that you keep this really simple. You go to the beginning of your video, you add in a keyframe. And when you add in that keyframe, what you're doing, actually we're going to have to tab back to the beginning. We're going to add in a keyframe. And what we're going to do is we're just going to choose a highlight effect. I like to have my cursor highlighted in yellow. I mean, there are some other choices that you've got there in the drop-down menu. The left click effect, I like to see rings. Again, you've got choices. And then the right click, I like to see a ripple. You've got choices here, whatever is your preference. If you want to have a sound effect, you can actually put in a mouse click and a laptop click so that every click that happens inside of your video, you'll actually hear it and your screencasting software will make a sound for the viewer. Now, I like to put this right at the beginning of the video. That makes it simple because it'll appear all the way through and it'll appear even when you split your timeline. So again, I mean, there are more advanced ways to do this. That's the simplest way to actually insert your cursor effects. Now, when you have to blur out sensitive information, all you're going to really do is slide your timeline to the point in the video where you want it blurred out. And let's say that this is information I don't want everyone to see. what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my callout area. I'm going to need to find the blur callout, which is here. That's going to put a box here. That's a blurry box. I can resize that box to the area where I want the information blurred. And now this is what the viewer is going to see. And then I can determine how long I want that blur to appear by stretching it on the timeline. Right? So I know that it's going to appear that long. Now again, I mean, you can get as detailed as you want. You can have your blur fade in or fade out. But again, you want to try to keep these kinds of things simple. You just want to use the basics so that your viewer will be able to get the maximum effect. You don't want to spend a lot of time on effects and callouts and things like that, because again, those are going to be the kind of things that are going to slow you down and bog you down. Okay, so those are the things that we wanted to show you here. You now have some basic editing that you are able to do, and again, you can go through a more extensive tutorial with TechSmith or with ScreenFlow, but those are going to be the basic things you really need in order to create a tutorial video that you are going to sell. And if you can do those things, you can add to the effect in your video, and you will be able to do all of your videos in one setting because you can edit basically using the functions that I just showed you. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video we're going to be discussing inserting images and audio. And you are going to want to use audios sometimes at the beginning in your video for branding purposes. And you may have an image that you use, or your company, or a logo, or something that you want people to be able to see and associate with your company as they're watching your tutorial video. Now with respect to music and audio, you'll want to make sure that if you're going to use music, like you hear in this video, that your music is royalty free, or in other words, that you don't have to pay the creator of the music in order to use that music commercially. And when it comes to images, the same thing is going to be true. You want to make sure that you purchase royalty free images for commercial use, or probably the best way to use images is to find the image that you really need and then to have someone take it for you, or for you to take that image yourself, either with a mobile device or with a digital camera. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use them by placing them on the timeline, and you're going to use the split feature. And I'm going to show you how to use that here in a minute. Now, inserting audio will allow you to fade your music in and out, and I'm actually going to show you that also. Now let's go to the timeline so you can see some of this in action. Now in order to display this to you, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to a video that is already in progress. I'm going to delete out the additional audio. I'm going to delete it from the track 2, then I'm going to skip here to the end of the video, and I'm going to delete the audio track. I'm going to make sure that this is saved. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to place audio inside of the video. Now I'm going to skip and I'm going to tab back to the beginning. And anytime that you want to skip through your presentation while you're editing, you do want to use these tab features, and they will actually go to places where either you have a split or you have a definitive place with a transition or a title clip. Now what you're going to do here is you notice that you have your title clip here, you have a transition there. And so what we want to do is, while that transition is happening, while the title clip is showing, we want to place a little music there. And so what we're going to do is we are now going to find music. Now remember, I've already got this music inside of my clip bin, but if I didn't, what I'd do is I'd go to the file area, I'd go to import media, and then I'd go and I'd find music and then draw it into the clip bin. So now that I have this music here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the entire file and I'm going to put it right here at the beginning of the timeline. So I'm going to pull it right down to the timeline and drop it there. Okay, so the entire music, and as you can see, this clip is probably longer than 1 minute. We obviously don't want the intro music to play 1 minute long, so I'm going to tab through to the point where I want the music to begin. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to place it right there, and then I'm going to hit the split button. Now what that does, when I hit the split button, you don't worry about it if it splits this audio. It's not gonna sound like that when your video actually plays. I'm going to then take this portion of the audio, right, and then I'm going to hit Control X and cut that out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to highlight inside of that audio clip, and I'm going to go to the audio editing feature. I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit and fade in and fade out. And you're going to see that fading in and fading out right there. And that's how I want the audio to play into the actual talking from the speaker, who is me. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to skip to the end of the presentation, and I'm going to do the same thing. And you can see that here. I want this audio to be playing while the end clip is playing and while the transition is playing. So what I've done is I'm going to pull the cursor to the point where I want the additional music. I'm going to highlight inside there on the audio track, and then I'm going to hit Control V, which is the paste. Just like you would cut and paste a document, we're going to cut and paste that audio clip that we cut. And obviously, we've got more clip there than we do the transition and the title clip. So I'm going to skip there to the end. Actually, I'm going to skip right back there to the end of the title clip, and then I'm going to hit the split button right here. And when I hit the split button, then I'm going to have this piece, and I'm going to literally hit the cut button. And then I'm going to highlight inside of the audio clip. I'm going to turn the volume down, fade it in, and fade it out. And now I'll have music playing during the transition as well as the title clip. Now the other thing that we talked about was the fact that you can actually place images on the timeline. And let's say that instead of having this title clip here, that I actually want to have a branding image. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this title clip there, and I'm going to delete it. And when I delete that image, what happens is you'll notice that the transition goes away. So we're going to have to make sure to put that back there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the clip bin, and I'm going to import the image that I want. I'm going to go to import media. I'm going to take what could be my my logo, even though it isn't, but you can have any image there, or a PNG file or a JPEG file. I'm going to click open, and now I've got what we're pretending to be my logo right here. And I'm just going to literally drag that to the timeline, right to the end of my video. But as you know, we've already got audio there that's about as long as the transition, as well as the title clip. So I'm going to go back to the transition. I'm going to right-click on the one that I want, and I'm going to put that transition back in there. So let's go back to the clip bin, and you're going to notice now I'm going to need to drag the audio back to make sure that it matches in terms of length. And so we have the matching audio. Now I'm going to go back to this audio and just make sure that it's doing what we want it to do. I'm going to go to the audio editing. Okay, it's still fading in and out the way we had it. And that is how you're going to add in audio and images to your timeline for branding and for any other portion of your video that you want to give a little more effect to the actual viewers. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video we're going to be talking about using transitions, and transitions are going to help you to move from one scene to another. And when you have places in your videos where you have things that maybe you have edited and maybe they don't necessarily fit together, or you would have liked to use a certain phrase between certain places, one of the ways that you can bridge it together without having to create an entirely new video is to use transitions. And transitions will really put those disjointed pieces together, make an edit good, or in some cases where you have 2 or 3 videos that you want to put in the same same project, you are going to want to use a transition. Now, an earlier version of Camtasia, like the one that we are displaying, you would need to use a split. In later versions, it's a little easier. It's drag and drop. Now, one of the best uses of transition is to use them before and after a title clip, which we have shown you in prior videos. Now, one thing that's important here, when you're using transitions, don't overuse them in one video. Don't get too deeply into them. They are a nice effect, but they can get you distracted from your primary focus, and that is to communicate with your viewer. And really, transitions help you to communicate with your viewer. It helps them to keep them focused on the subject without losing the train of thought. And that is what you're really doing with your transitions. You're helping to keep that viewer focused on your message. Now, let's take a look at the timeline so we can see how you can do this within your actual video. Now, we are looking at a video that has already been completed. And let's come to this particular place in the timeline. And let's come to this place. And let's say that we have a place in our video where we are looking at a place between, here is where we're capturing a screen and we're going to PowerPoint. And in many cases, that's a good place to do a transition, where you have 2 distinct things happening on the screen, and you want to keep your viewer focused, and you want to help them to make that transition with you. So what you're going to do here is, once again, we're going to take advantage of the features of Camtasia, and we're going to stretch out the video so that we can find the exact place where there's a changeover. So let's stretch it out as much as we can, as far as we can stretch it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slide this cursor back and forth where we can see the exact point. Notice, see how the scene changes? So we're going to go to that exact point. And there, what we're going to do now is we are going to click the split button. That splits the timeline. Then what we can do is we can shrink the video again. But now that we have this break here, we can now go to the transitions. And of course, as we said before, we have a number of ways that we can actually do that transition. And as we can see here, we have a new break. You can see it, and you can denote that by the arrow that we see there. And we can do that transition any way that we want to. And Camtasia gives you a number of ways. In later versions of Camtasia, there are even more, probably an overwhelming number of them. But you probably want to, in your videos, try to find one that you're going to use most of the time or all the time. It's not going to be too distracting. And then be consistent in using it. As I said, you don't want to get into the different ways you can do transitions. I mean, those are all wonderful. Just kind of pick one that you like and that you can keep doing in your videos. You can actually even make it a USP or a branding point if you like. So in this particular case, what we're going to do is find the transition that we like. We're going to then go to that one and then right click it. And we're going to do it after clip number 2. And as you can see here, let's see. Here's clip number 1. There's clip number 2. We see the arrow. So that's where we can actually put that transition. We're going to go here where it says clip number 2, and we're going to put it there. And you're going to notice your transitions show up right there. Okay, so that is now your new transition, and what's going to happen is it's actually going to show up now on your timeline. Okay, so now what we're going to do is what we like to do is we like to just play the video so that we can see it actually happening, and you can see now that's what your transition is going to do. Okay, so that's a great way, again, of being able to bring together those pieces that are disjointed. What you're going to do is stretch out, find the exact point where you want that video to turn, and then you can actually stick your transition in there and bring together those pieces that, again, where you've got a messy edit and you want to bring together pieces that just may not make sense if you put them together. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video we're going to be talking about using presets to render your video and do the final production. Now we're not going to get extensively into this process because, again, we're going to make sure that you know enough to be able to produce your video and get it ready to package it for sale. Now, in order to produce your video, you will need to understand how your video is actually going to look. And if you're going to be producing your video for YouTube or for sale, in most cases, you might host that video on YouTube, or you're going to give it to someone if they and that person might very well put that video on YouTube in order to watch or in order to show to their customers, however you're packaging it up and selling it. Now, you are going to want it to be at least 720 pixels wide and 480 pixels tall at the time of production. So whatever the standard is, you want to find the highest standard definition, and you want to use that in your videos. Now, currently, the highest standard definition is 1920 pixels by 1028 pixels. However, that is probably not going to be the definition that most users are going to need. You want to try to use probably the one that's right below that, and in this case, that's going to be 720 by 480. If you have the right equipment, go ahead certainly and produce 1920 by 1028. But if you can produce 720 by 480, then that is what you want to do. Now, Camtasia will allow you to custom edit your videos, and that's really what gives you the power of being able to do a number of different things in this post-production process that will not only make your videos look great, but it will also give you the opportunity to save some time and to produce some extra value for the people who are going to be viewing your videos. Now, the easiest trick is to use the HD setting and to adjust your size. Now, there is obviously a lot more extensive discussion on rendering and sizing, and for that, we suggest that you look at our advanced courses for that. We're going to show you enough to get started, just enough to make you dangerous enough to actually get your project completed. We are now looking at a completed project, and we are now ready to render this video. We're ready to produce it and turn it into an actual video. Now, what we're going to do here is we are going to go to the produce and share, and we're going to click that link, and you're going to get a number of choices in Camtasia. Now, one of the ways that you can do that certainly is to use custom production settings. And what we're going to do is we are going to go to these production settings, which is your HD section, and we're going to edit them for your recording screen. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to literally edit that preset, and we're going to go to the HD settings, and all we're going to change here are going to be the sizing dimensions. And we're just going to go to those sizing dimensions, and we're going to make sure. Now, you'll see here that they're 1280 by 720. We're going to change those to 1280 by 800, which is our recording dimensions. And then we're going to click Finish. We're going to close it. And now what we're going to do is we are going to render our video according to the HD settings, which we now know to be 1280 by 800, which are our recording definitions, and then we will go through the rendering process. Now, in the case where we're going to be batch rendering, this is going to be pretty important because you want to be able to do this before you start the batch rendering process, which we will talk about here at the end of the course. But once you have your HD settings to your recording settings, you are then ready to render a video. So now you're going to go through this process and you're going to actually save it where you actually want the video to be. Okay, but in the meanwhile, if you're not going to be batch rendering, you can go ahead and start the creation process. But if you're not, you can just leave that process where it is, where you've changed the HD settings to your recording dimensions, and you can cancel out of this, so that now when you get ready for the batch rendering process, you will be ready again to start your video production. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video we're going to be talking about a rule that you want to use when you are creating presentations, and it is a guideline. And that guideline is called the 6x6 rule. Now you want to use this as a guideline because typically in adult learning and anything that you're going to do in terms of instructional technology, you want to try to keep your presentation under 6 words per line and 6 lines per slide. More often than not, you're not going to be able to do this. But you want to use the 6x6 rule in order to edit out unnecessary words. So when you are editing out anything that you're saying that probably you don't have to have in terms of words, when you get down to 6x6, you're probably at the absolute minimum that you should be. So anything probably more than that, you can edit down to 6x6. Now, in addition to the 6x6 rule, there is a standard practice when it comes to images. And that is that you generally don't need to use them. And you only use them when they visually explain a word that that is better explained with an image. So in other words, you want to have the image to represent words and really give your viewers or those who are kind of tuning into your video a better idea of what you're talking about with those images. Now, Camtasia does provide an add-on with PowerPoint, and you will be encouraged to use it by Camtasia and by PowerPoint. However, there are disadvantages to using it. Now, in particular, there is the ability to add on other information from your web browser. In other words, when you have to change information, when you have to actually use your web browser and bring it into your presentation, you're going to find that to be a little more cumbersome and a little more difficult when you are using the add-on feature between PowerPoint and Camtasia. So in general, you want to use the Camtasia timer and camera instead of the PowerPoint add-on with Camtasia. Okay, so that's just in general the 6x6 rule. Remember, you're typically not going to be able to use it that way, but you do want to use it as a guideline in order to reduce unnecessary words and images. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video we're going to be talking about recording picture-in-picture video, literally where you're going to be able to have your a video of yourself, live video, on your PowerPoint presentation, typically in the right-hand corner or the left-hand corner when you are screencasting, and Camtasia and ScreenFlow give you the opportunity to do that. It's a great way to personalize your tutorial video when you're using that picture-in-picture setting. What it does is it gives the viewer the opportunity to literally see you while you present, and that really does establish a personal connection for the video. And you are literally projecting yourself, right? Your camera is on, your webcam is functioning, and your webcam is showing you in your home office or wherever it is you're doing your actual presentation. Now, you want to be aware of what you're doing when you're going to be on screen. In particular, you want to be aware of where your video is going to appear. Now, if you're going to appear and you're going to set it so that your video is going to be in the right-hand corner, you want to make sure that your PowerPoint presentation is set up so that as you present or as you scroll through, that you leave space for where that video is going to be. If your video is going to be on the right left-hand corner, then you want to be aware of that while you're creating your video, your PowerPoint presentation, because you know that you don't want to have words in that space. So be aware of where your video is going to be and where you're going to be presenting. Now, you may also want to create slides in that way when you have either images or you have particular slide presentations with particular branding. Again, just be aware of where that picture-in-picture video is going to be. Now, although you can use your computer's webcam, it is recommended. Probably one of the best webcams in order for you to do this would be the Logitech 930E at the time of this recording. And the reason that this is such a fantastic choice is because it renders HD or high definition video and uses less of your computer's processing power. And so because all of the processing occurs within the actual video camera, it really will be ideal for you while you are screencasting. You can see a picture of the Logitech 930E sits right on top of your computer, and it gives a great image and great video when you're doing your presentation. So as you consider doing picture-in-picture video, personalizing your videos, get a good webcam when you can. Obviously, if you can't afford one right away, you want to use the webcam that's associated with your laptop or the one that you have. Then when you can, or when you've earned enough income, you want to upgrade to a high definition camera, and the best one currently at the time of recording is the Logitech 930E. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video we're going to be talking about saving time by using the batch production feature inside of Camtasia Studio. And what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to basically render multiple videos at once. Now, one of the things that's going to save you time once you understand the presets feature of Camtasia is the batch production setting. And you're going to be able then to really use that preset or whatever the setting is to render multiple videos, or at least all the videos in your course at one time. Basically, you're going to be able to set and forget the rendering process instead of rendering videos one at a time or rendering them all to tie up your computer. You're going to set them in motion on your production machine, and then you're going to either walk away or start another process or job that you're doing. Now, when you use the batch production process, as I said, you should be using your production machine. And it's best to do so with a separate external drive. But if that's not possible, you should plan to use your home network to access the files. Now, one other thing that you want to do is don't forget to use this opportunity to create multiple MP3 files, and we'll show you that here right now. Now, it's best to do so with a separate drive, but if that's not possible, you should be planning to use your home network to access the files. Now, once again, don't forget to use this opportunity when you're using the batch production feature to also, at the same time, create multiple MP3s. And we're going to show you that here in a minute. We are now here inside of Camtasia Studio. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all of the videos that we have available to us, and we're going to start the rendering process. Now, a rendering process can typically take up to 2 or 3 hours, whether or not when you've got multiple videos, but you do not have to sit and wait and watch the process happen. What you can do is you can go to the Tools setting, and then you're going to go to the sharing area, and then you're going to go to batch production. And that's going to open up the batch production dialog box. And then you're going to click Add Files and Projects. Now, when you're doing a course, what you're going to do is you're going to want to make sure that you're going to grab the project files, and you're going to want to make sure to grab them all. And so what you're going to do is you're going to just highlight all of the project files, and you're literally going to pull them all into the job at the same time. Now, this is the benefit now of your having created all your videos, done all the editing, because now what you're ready to do is you're ready to now edit them or render them all at one time. So you're just going to click the open file, and then Camtasia is going to bring them into this area. You're then going to go to the next feature, and then this is where you're going to use your preset. Now, in this particular case, we've already, if you've been following the course, set up the HD. And so now we are ready to go. We're going to go to the next phase. And so all we really do now is we now then decide, okay, where do we want to save these files? And then we click the Finish button and we start the rendering process. Now, one thing that you want to be aware of is we talked about the fact that you can use this opportunity to create multiple MP3 files. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that our preset is set to do multiple MP3s. Now, let's take a look at that. And we're just going to go backwards. And when we do this, we're going to take a look at the preset manager. And now we're going to go in, we're going to edit this HD preset. And you notice here that we've got checked off that we're going to create an MP3 file at the same time to create a video. Now, you're not able to do this at the same time in later versions of Camtasia, but in every version of Camtasia up until version 7, you are able to do this. This is one of the reasons why some of the older versions of Camtasia can be better than some of the new versions. You can actually do this at the same time and be very productive. Of course, there are more advanced features in some of the newer versions, but this is one feature in terms of production that is very important to you as an internet marketer, because this will save you time and will save you effort to be able to create the MP3 file and the MP4 file at the same time. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about cursor effects, blurs, and callout notes, which we talked about earlier in the course. And of course, one of the ways that you want to think about this, if you're doing screen sharing, of course, you know that these are these extra things that you're putting into your presentation, because it will help your viewer keep their attention focused on what it is that you were talking about. Now, when you're using sensitive information, of course, you're going to blur that information out, and we've shown you how to do that, but let's take a brief look again. And we're also going to take a look at adding in commentary, arrows, and other features using callouts, but making sure not to distract our viewer with too many extras. And of course, before we go to the timeline, this is an important note to make. You can eliminate the need for a lot of these things, messages, callouts, and blurs, with good preparation. So really planning out your presentation, really giving good explanation, that is really the best way to take and keep your viewer focused, because you'll keep your presentation concise, you'll move to the information that's pertinent, and you won't have to add in extra notes. But you will come across those times where it's necessary to do your blurring and to add in extra notes. So let's take a look at the timeline. Okay, we talked about blurs earlier, but callouts are those notes that we're able to use, and there are several effects that we can use inside of our PowerPoint presentation or inside of our video. We can actually add an arrow, and we can size that arrow the way we want. We can actually write a note inside of a box and control the color of that box. For example, if we wanted to change the color or the background color, we could do that. We can literally put in a circle, or we can add in an image. We can actually put an image in there. So there are lots of things that we can do inside of our callouts that will allow us to enhance our presentation. But again, you want to keep your viewer focused on what it is that you are discussing and not so much what you are placing there on the screen. Use the callouts in order to enhance what you're doing and not to make up for poor planning. Now, the other thing that we want to talk about there are blurs. Of course, we've seen that earlier. You can then change this to a blur, and you can literally blur out information. And the most important aspect of this is making sure that you understand where the timeline is to be able to go to the timeline and make sure that the blur lasts as long as you want it to last. Right now, in addition to call-out notes, blurs, you can also do what we talked about, cursor effects. And you can find the cursor effects in the entire menu. Just make sure, again, that you are leaving that cursor there at the beginning, and you're adding in the effects that you want your cursor to highlight. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this. Again, remember, all these are things that you should use in order to enhance your viewer's attention and not to make up for something that maybe you might not have done right at the start. Of course, you're never going to have a perfect screencasting course. When you do this, you will need to go back and add notes from time to time, and callouts are there to help you when you do that. So with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video we're going to be talking about saving time by using the program ROMZipper to finalize production for delivery. Now once you've created all of your videos for your course, you are going to then want to get them ready for delivery and sale by packaging them in zip files. And you can do this very easily with the ROMZipper program. Now with ROMZipper you can zip up multiple files simultaneously. Now the most important thing is that you have all of your files in the same folder without additional folders, and we'll show you what that means here in a minute. Now, zipping up your files will make it easier to upload to your host in order to deliver them to your buyer. So now let's take a look at ROMZipper, and first let's just take a look and make sure that all of our files are in the same directory ready to be zipped up together. Okay, so now we see we've got both our MP3 and our MP4. They're all in the same folder and they're ready to be zipped up and delivered to our customer. So now all that we need to do is we need to go to ROMZipper and zip up the files. Now you'll find a link to the program. It's free, ROMZipper, in your resource guide there at the end of this at the end of the course. And if you click that link and get ROMZipper, this is what the site will look like. And this is where you'll get the program, ROMZipper. So now let's open up ROMZipper so that we can zip up our files. Okay, so now that ROMZipper is open, we're now going to go to that place in our computer where we're going to zip up our files. We're going to go to that particular directory. So now that we have ROMZipper open, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all the files that we want to have zipped. And then we're going to click Zip Files. And then ROMZipper is going to ask them where we want to zip these files to, or what directory we want them to appear. We're going to choose one. Now we should have already determined where we're going to send these files, but we're just going to send them to a directory here, and we're going to delete them later. But we're going to go ahead and click OK. And as soon as you click OK, the process has already started. You're going to see here it's zipping up files. Right, it's zipping up the files, and then at some point ROMZipper will finish. I'm going to stop the recording here until it finishes. Okay, and then once ROMZipper is finished, then you won't see it say zipping files anymore. You'll be able to go to the directory where those files are, and you'll see everything is zipped up into zip or compressed files, and they are now ready for upload. So what ROMZipper does for you, it packages all of your files. It makes them ready to be zipped up and then to be uploaded to your server. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video we're going to be discussing using Camtasia to create MP3s. And you are going to be able to do this for your information products or anything else that you want to use them for. Now when you're creating courses, you will often want to also give your buyer MP3 files. When you use older versions of Camtasia Studio, such as Camtasia Studio 7, you can simultaneously create and render videos and MP3s. When you have newer versions, version 8 and above, you'll have to export the file as an MP4. Now what this will do is this will help you to save time, as you'll be able to create all of your content first, then set your videos to produce your course or your product. And we're going to show you how you're going to do that inside of one of the older versions of Camtasia right now. Now you are now looking at a Camtasia project, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and produce this and get it ready for post-production. And we assume that we have edited it. And so what we're going to do is we are going to do custom production settings and go next. And what you'll notice here is that Camtasia gives you the option to either tick or untick create an MP3 file at the same time as you create an MP4 file. Now what will happen is that in the same directory that you produce the MP4, you'll also find an MP3 file there also. And then you're going to click next, and then you're going to start the rendering process. Now let me show you how it's going to look inside of the directory. Now you're looking at some files or a course that was created with Camtasia, and you'll notice that first of all the files are named the same in terms of MP4 and MP3s. Now this is because this was rendered all at one time. This was a course that was set and it was put in motion in order to be rendered, and the MP4s and MP3s were created at the same time. Now this is something that you can do in Camtasia 7, and it is very easy to do. Now if you do it in Camtasia 8, it can be just as easy, although you'll have to do it in 2 steps. You won't be able to do it in 1 as you did in the last screen. Now I have opened Camtasia 8 here, and you're going to notice I've got a project file. Now if I were to go through that same process as I did with Camtasia 7, and I went to look through doing that, you're going to notice that there is no place for me to actually create the MP4 at the same time as the MP3. So what I need to do is I need to create my MP4s first, and then I need to come back and then do a second process. I would come back, produce and share, and then I would actually do the MP3. Okay, so there's a 2-step process with some of the later versions. There's a 1-step process with version 7 and before. But either way, you should be able to save quite a bit of time by using Camtasia to create your MP3s and by using your MP4s to create audios. So in other words, you're able to double your production by giving your viewer something that they can actually listen to where they are. They can actually take your video and either watch it or listen to it by audio. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back to this last video. Now you know the basics that are needed in order to create a course using Camtasia Studio or any other screencasting software. You can now do it for sale or for profit. And now certainly within any screencasting program, Camtasia is no different, there are a lot more advanced features. But they only enhance what is already excellent about this screencasting program. Now, no course in screencasting, though, and this is very important to remember, will make up for mediocre content. So you've got to make sure that even before you start this process, that what you're communicating is excellent and top-notch, because this will help you to communicate with your buyer more than anything else. The screencasting will really just enhance that connection. So how do you do that? Well, you make sure that you're prepared before you start recording. Set up as much as you can beforehand so that you'll be ready to start the recording process. We've given you some hints and some clues in this course on how you do that. Now, if you want to get into what really makes a good course and what really helps people, make sure you take our follow-up courses on learning theory. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video and hopefully in another course.